it's Richard Tice. Morning, Richard.
A very good morning to you. And whilst the weather, Cristo, may be a little glum and gloomy out there, let me tell you that the mood is bright and cheery here at Reform because, we're making progress. We've got the momentum, we've got the growth. Our member numbers are continuing to soar.
Are they fake, though?
Don't be ridiculous. Of course, these are genuine numbers because yesterday, in order to prove it, we had not one but 4 separate journalists and digital investigative journalists from the Sky News, from the Spectator, the Telegraph, and the Financial Times, who all looked at what's called the back-end server, the database, with the Nation Builder database. So they could see the numbers, they could see new members joining, and therefore they could see that actually it is genuine. They've all written up that they've seen the evidence, that it's genuine. And that really is rather embarrassing for what I'm calling the sort of rather inexperienced, naive Kemi Badenoch. She talks about being an engineer, a bit like, dear old Keir Starmer talks about his dad being a toolmaker. Well, I think Kemi, maybe she's a graduate engineer or a junior engineer. She's not a proper engineer. She doesn't know what she's talking about.
But can I ask a question about those numbers? And you're right. I know that a lot of journalists have looked into this. I know that you have vociferously denied that there's any impropriety. But just when it comes to the numbers and the way in which they are presented on the web page, we were speaking about this a bit yesterday, and I would have no problem with this, by the way. But so sometimes when you go onto a petition website and when you get onto the page, it will show suddenly 100 more votes on that petition when you've got to that page. Well, they've not got those 100 votes at that second. It's just a way of sort of giving
Let me explain.
Yeah.
So this is a website that every 20 or 30 seconds refreshes into the server with the database on it.
But is it live?
So
Are those numbers going up live?
Well, they're live every 30 seconds or so, which is why you'll get a jump. And if you go on in the middle of the night, well, the jump is barely anything because most people, sensible people, are asleep. Whereas if you go on at sort of 6 to 7 o'clock in the evening, then obviously the increase has been that much more marked. And the journalists who looked at it yesterday, they looked at all of those different time and growth analyses. So when we say live, 30 seconds is to most people pretty live, but it's not live to a 100th of 1 second.
But it is as live as can be, I suppose.
As can sensibly, reasonably be. That's right, Chris.
But you're at 146,528 at the moment, so you're a good 15,000 or so ahead of the Conservatives.
And look, because we're so confident in our numbers, we've made the generous offer that anybody can bring in a Big Four audit firm to look at our numbers, see the integrity of them, analyse them, drill into them, and whilst they're at it, they might as well pop round to Tories CCHQ and do a review and audit of their numbers and see how truthful they are, because information that reaches us, we think some of their members are dead, sadly. We think many of them have left the Tories to join us. We know their ballot papers were sent to people who cancelled their membership. So let's see what's the real story at Tory CCHQ, shall we? And
also, as well, as a caller pointed out yesterday, and I don't know what the accuracy of this is, but also because there is a number of Conservative clubs and associations across the UK, sometimes by becoming a member of that club in order to get the cheap beer, you become a Conservative member, but you're actually not remotely active in the party other than being a member of the club. And so some people have said, well, actually, does that count as a genuine membership as well? So it does seem like a can of worms has now been opened.
I think the simple thing is that Kemi's had a bad day, and look, we can all get things wrong. The smart, big thing to do is to apologise, for which she would get some credit, rather than try and sort of bluster her way through it and just say, look, I'm sorry, I got this wrong. Bit of festive cheer and all that, and we move on into the political battles and debates of 2025. And
now Reform,
everybody can put it behind us.
Reform are quite good at those, but Kemi Badenoch has also said, and this was prior to the controversy over the numbers, that actually what Reform are brilliant at is knee-jerk analysis, and that with her you will get thoughtful, conservatism, not this knee-jerk analysis. I mean, are you all just brilliant populism and brilliant headline makers, but actually a bit thin on the ground on policy, Richard?
Well, if that's her thoughtful conservatism, and she's made such a basic mistake with her IT team not to understand how things work, and given that she claims to be an engineer, then heaven knows what will happen when she tries to rewire the country and rewire the economy.
We've acknowledged that, but let's talk policies. But let's talk policies, because her accusation is that you don't have any policies, you've just got a scattergun approach to react to stuff.
Excuse me, we've got a contract from the general election. She's ripped up her failed manifesto, and she's basically said we're not going to have any policies in the Conservative Party for 4 years. So I'm not going to take any nonsense about policies. We've got a clear policy to grow the economy by scrapping the job-destroying, industry-killing net zero that's driving up bills, that's driving up our cost of living. We need to increase the starting point to pay income tax to £20,000 a year, so you make work pay and help get people off benefits. Those are the key things we need to do in economic terms. And then in things like the critical issue of immigration, we need to have net zero immigration, one in, one out, and we've got a clear plan to stop the boats you pick up and take back, as we are legally entitled to do.
Now, Richard, you know, you and I have argued about this both on and off air.
And every time you must admit, Christo, you're wrong.
No.
You don't know what you're talking about. You are so not. I regret that Christmas card to him now. I really do, because you know, and I've say this with love, but you know, instructing the Navy to turn the boats back is nonsense, because they will just say they're not going to do it. And I'm yet to meet someone from Reform, but when I say that to them, how will you make the Navy do this? They all come out with nonsense, but they don't actually have a plan as to how they'll do that. Have you actually spoken to anybody in the military who says they will ignore a direct order from the Commander-in-Chief?
They don't need to speak to me. They ignored Priti Patel, they ignored Suella Braverman, they ignored Boris Johnson.
Christo, I'm sorry. The military will do what they're asked to do by the politicians. They always have done, and they always will. And
they didn't in 2022, Richard.
They don't make judgments of their own. They look at the law, and the 1982 UN Convention of the Law at Sea, the Maritime Treaty, is crystal clear. We're entitled to do it. France has a legal obligation to do it. They're in breach of that legal obligation. Belgium has carried out their own legal obligations, which is why they pick up and take back any boats that tried to leave the Belgian shores. And guess what? The boats stop leaving the Belgian shores. If the French comply with their obligations, this stops. If they fail, we'll do the job for them. And here's a little Christmas suggestion.
Yes.
If we have to do their job for them, maybe instead of us sending money to France, maybe we'll send them the bill instead.
But as you know this, the Ministry of Defence in 2022 sent out a tweet saying that they will not be turning back the boats. They have also, back in February 2022, they denied that they were going to be doing it because they said it was a risk to life. So look, I'm not having a go at you having that policy. You can have that policy. I'm asking you to what you would do if the Navy say to you what they said to Priti Patel, that we don't want to do it because of the risk to life. What is your plan B to make them do it?
They will comply with an order in accordance with the law. That is that. And if the military fail to comply with an order, then there are processes and procedures, which ends up with a court-martial.
So you would court-martial the admirals?
They will carry out the orders. They will carry out the orders because that's what our brilliant military, with their fantastic training, do and always have done. And let me tell you, they know, and I've spoken to many people, both in the services and veterans, they are as desperate to stop the boats as anybody else. What they want is some proper, courageous, political leadership who will stop the boats.
But why didn't they do it then when they were asked to in 2020?
Because they weren't ordered to do it, Christo, in the way that I've described, under the laws that I've described. You know, you've got to understand what is the difference. The difference is we've got the courage and the leadership that the Conservative Party simply didn't have.
All right, Peter Barnes is desperate to come in here.
Yeah.
What do you want to say, Peter?
I actually agree with Richard on this one, and I didn't think I was going to be doing that today. The way you would make the Admirals do it is you would make it a national security crisis. How it is not already classified as one staggers me, given what we've seen in Germany and throughout Europe.
You're giving him answers now.
Yeah, I know. And as a Conservative, I feel very uncomfortable doing this. But, yeah.
Well, Peter, if you read our 6-point plan to stop the boats, point number one is you declare a national security threat.
That is the one bit of the 6-point plan, and I use the word plan, roughly. Bullet points aren't a plan. I need more detail. I think you need to have more than just a couple of bullet points. And don't get me wrong, the Conservatives need to do the same.
The Ministry of Defence said in 2022, we are fed up with trying to enact the Prime Minister and Home Secretary's plan of using the military to control small boats in the Channel, and they threatened to walk away. They then sent out a tweet saying that we will not push back. We will maintain what we do, which is ordering Border Force to do that, but we will not turn back any of the boats.
National Security Act changes this.
That's what they said, though.
Yeah, the National Security Act changes that situation.
It's very simple. The military will carry out an order from the commander-in-chief.
Richard, you can't keep saying that. You can't keep saying that they didn't do it.
Sorry, Richard.
Let him answer.
Sorry.
That is because they didn't have the leadership that saw it through. Maybe that tweet, Christo, was sent by a woke, feeble civil servant that doesn't believe in controlling the borders. I feel you're going down the same path, for heaven's sake. You don't lead by driving from the back seat. You lead by driving from the front.
So would you court-martial
with courage and conviction? That's what leadership is all about.
Would you court-martial the Admirals? If the Admirals said, we're not doing it, if the Ministry of Defence said, we're not doing it, would you fire them? Would you court-martial them? What would you do?
They will comply with their legal obligations. I absolutely have no doubt about that. I think you're looking at a historic tweet 3 years ago, Christo. You're not looking at the current reality and the future reality.
Well, yeah, but respectfully, I'm looking at what has been tried before and the reasons why it failed.
Christo,
and I'm asking you what would be different. I was just asking you what would be different.
Because you're not comparing apples with apples. They weren't instructed in order to do it under using the law that I am talking about, the 1982 UN Convention of the Law of the Sea. It is as simple as that.
All right.
And if I'm saying that he's right and I'm me and that's reform,
I feel like about numbers here.
And I feel really uncomfortable doing that. So thanks, Christo.
No Christmas card next year for you, I tell you that for nothing. Thank you. Really good to talk to you. As always, that's Richard Tice, who I was arguing with there, and Deputy Leader of Reform UK. He says, look, it's a different situation. It will be different people in charge, and that will be the reason why the Navy will agree to the order. Bit thin on detail, I think, if you ask me, but that's why he says it's a little bit different.
There's also a big question as to who did he mean when he said Commander-in-Chief?
Yes.
Did he think Nigel Farage was going to be head of the army? Because that's not how it works here.
It's the king, isn't it? So what was he going to do? Get the king out on a dinghy?